All right, 501 here.
Okay, we'll call the planning committee meeting to order. It's October 25th, 2021. Do a roll call. Councilmember Davies here. Councilmember Carson. Councilmember Drenick here. And Councilmember Risberger on here. Did everybody get a chance to read the minutes from last meeting? Any questions at all? So first topic of today is Lower Wilbur Park basketball court screening. Greg, are you ready to begin that discussion?
Sure. So I think the last we talked about this, we were gonna, Councilmember Davis has gotten some feedback from residents, and not all of it, or maybe not any of it positive, but I know some of it has been a little bit of concern about the noise, which was a concern. I think don't want to speak for you, Mark, but more noise than visual.
Yeah.
Is a concern about.
Yes.
Okay, so obviously the barriers we were talking about were more, visual barrier than an acoustic barrier. And Lennon suggested, I think you just looked it up last meeting, you were here, something called acoustic fence. So we looked into that price. That would be the most expensive option compared to the other ones. $12,000 to install a 10-foot high, which is the height of the fence now, 120-foot long. Acoustic fence, which attaches to the existing chain link fence and provides some measure of acoustic barrier. I can't speak to. We haven't yet contacted anyone to install this to see how it's gone. Just in our website and reached out that way. So that's another option to consider.
Greg, we were what, 6,000 was vegetation?
The hedgerow is like 6,200. The stockade fence was just under $5,000. Privacy screen attached to the chain link fence would be $25,000.
My question is, we had a tennis court there before. If it was a tennis court that was being utilized, would we still be getting the same complaints with the noise? And would we still be looking at doing this type of fencing?
The issue is well, first, the particular court has been underutilized in the past. I think that was some of the thinking behind converting it to a basketball court. But and pickleball has been utilized in this area, have been utilizing it for a number of years, 3 or 4 years, I guess. And I don't think most people don't have much of an issue with pickleball. It's generally quieter. But what is happening is that this particular court now, and I thought that we would address it 2 ways. One, without lining it, and then 2, having rules at the entrance that we would basically keep it more of a family basketball area that you'd see kids out there with their parents shooting hoops or kids playing around the world, whatever. But it's become, because frankly it's probably the nicest court in the entire city.
Right.
It's become the collection point for a bunch of young people who are playing a lot of music and are very loud, and it's really disrupted the quality of life for the residents in that particular area. And so I received a letter and I sent it to you, Greg, and I can certainly send out to the rest of the people. It really details kind of some of the issues they've had. They've had lots of noise. They've had to go over to the players and ask them to keep it down. They haven't, then they had to come back and say, listen, we're going to call the police if you don't keep it down. They have reached out to try to understand what they should do. The comment has been call the police. It just seems like this has been a problem. So I guess what I wanted to suggest or to ask is that before we sit here and spend more money on this court, are we better off just rethinking it altogether? Because while I appreciate the acoustic fence and looking into that, Greg, I appreciate it. $12,000. We're just throwing more money at a problem here that's just not going to go away based on acoustic fence or based on a visual barrier. And I think that I recognize fully that and as a former resident of Union Street for 18 years, that there's a little bit of sacrifice you make in terms of being right back up to the park, but this is a very interesting one because it's the only kind of basketball court, or kind of really active type of recreational space that we have that's pushed up against a property line in this particular way. there's no other example, and I was, kind of looking at things, trying to see if there's any other examples within the city park system, and this is it. So I think it creates some of the challenges that this is going to, push up alongside of the residential area, and the neighbors are just not happy, and they don't feel like they were ever asked about it, they're just quite upset about it, and they don't feel like it's going to change. So that is what they're voicing to me.
Have they said anything along the lines of if it was changed to a pickleball court or tennis court? Would they have any objections to that?
I mean, it was a tennis court.
It was just underutilized, but now it's been redone.
Right.
And I could see it being actually utilized. Regardless of what we have there, it could possibly be utilized.
Well, I think it can certainly be utilized. Pickleball has been used, and maybe not that particular court, but in that particular area, there's 2 other courts next to it. Those were usually used as pickleball courts. But I think, back to the original idea that we had in terms of some of the neighbors in that area brought up was maybe thinking about a alternative thing. So hopscotch or things like this that are painted into the courts so that it is actually a family-friendly or kid-friendly zone. Would be the solution. So it gets used, but it's just a different kind of use than we think of in terms of courts right now. The usage is all number of different things. But I think that would be very appealing to the residents, and certainly would not. It's just, and I've walked in the park and been on the upper level and can hear the music from the lower level with young people playing basketball and listening to music. So I think it's just the nature of where it is and where it's located.
Mark, I think we all agreed that the idea of painting kid-friendly games and so forth and so on would be something of a mitigating factor. But is the noise concern mostly around music?
No, it's music and language.
Lower the rims.
I'm sorry?
Can we lower the rims on those poles? So that they're not adjustable.
Well, it would be a permanent fix if we did it. I mean, I'm sure it would be lower, but it would be
To make it more.
They don't bolt to the pole.
I know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
If we lower it, then take the money that I like Mark's idea. If we just, I'm looking at the Google map, we go back to the upper part, which I'm assuming then kids aren't using that basketball court up there because this one's that much nicer. And that would be, the upper one is completely away from any residence.
Yeah, I like the idea of lowering the nets. I had my grandson at the house and we had to drop that basketball net 2 feet. And then he was a rock star once I dropped. That might be the way to go to keep it kid friendly.
I think we should talk to Lou, or someone should talk to Lou, because I think that might be half the solution. Because there's 2 hoops there right now, right? Yeah, it's full court, just without the lines, where if you're playing street ball, the lines don't necessarily matter, but we may want to consider lowering one, removing the other, possibly relocating the other one, so they're not opposite each other. And then, but if we're gonna do that, I think, I like your idea of adding some other kid-friendly things there. But I think Lou is probably the best one to ask about what is current. I don't know that hopscotch is necessarily gonna be. I mean, it might be, it might be, I just don't know, I don't even see the kids doing that. I mean, once in a great while at the schools, I see them writing those out now, but it's not like it used to be.
But the point is that Lou would definitely be more of an expert than us.
But.
Or today, in my hopscotch.
Yeah.
By putting the second, if you kept the second net at the, standard height, but had it, so you had the one facing this way short, so it's kind of a family-friendly, kid-friendly height, and then another one down here, so close, but down here, that was the right height, then you'd be looking at 3-on-3 kind of stuff. It maybe doesn't change the issue of the music and the language, but the fact that it's a mixed use like this with families might very well.
Well, I think the challenge, and Greg, you can certainly speak to this, is that these are cemented deep in place. They are very nice,
Nice.
full-on rims that I think they're beautiful.
So to just move them would be.
It would be a challenge to move them.
Mhm. How big a challenge, Greg?
I'm not sure that we could without having to buy new posts. I mean, certainly backwards. But I'm not sure. If some of this cast in place. That's what transplant.
But just having them not on opposite ends of one another would go a long way. You were talking Gabe, about physically moving it maybe into another part of the park.
No, same court. I think if you had one that was the right height.
Yeah, so we're talking about the same
Well,
thing.
well, hold on though. If you have one that's the right height and another one that is not, that's much lower.
Yeah.
And they're kitty corner of it, I think you're still gonna run into the problem, because what will happen is, as soon as there's a game there with a regular height, hoop, they're just gonna box out anybody else that's there, just like what happens in a regular gym.
Right.
If you lower them, I think it's still a good chance.
So if you lowered one,
Same
and then
issues,
just
but you may
remove
still-
the other, that would be.
That's another option.
Yeah.
But they may look at that as, hey, this is really cool. We can slam dunk all
And hang on the
afternoon
rim.
and hang from the rim. I think you'd have to really lower it to make it just more of an annoyance than a challenge.
Like 7.5 feet, 8 feet, something like that. Right?
Oh, I would even do
I think
lower.
that, I think like Dave, I'm gonna leave what Dave's saying there, that if you're at 8 feet, you're gonna have the same people.
I would lower it.
We're
some.
breaking the roads.
I would do like what they, if you go over to Greater Plains, there is one of those, I don't know what they call it, but it's a basket. You throw the ball in and then there's 4 different ways the ball could go.
Yeah.
It was set at, originally the post was like 8 or 10 feet. And Scott Radler years ago, he chopped it down before they installed it. And this thing only sits about maybe 5 feet off the ground. And that might be a solution.
That might be entertaining for a minute or two, but that's not gonna keep older players there for any length
Exactly.
of time. Yeah. And so that winds up being, then we take the second post out and relocate it. Is there another location that would make sense for a small court, kind of 3-on-3, 1-on-1 kind of scenario?
I mean, I don't think you, as far as 3-on-3 versus 5, I think, I drove by a couple times and it's 3-on-3 in play, there might be 5-on-5 times, but I don't know if that, I think it's the age group, and if I,
Yeah.
if they run music, they're right, whether it's 3-on-3 or 5-on-5, so. Certainly, there's an existing court in Upper Wilbur that's not very conditioned, but if you improve that, then we'll have the same people there, and
Right.
then do we get complaints about it being next to the playground? And the pavilion, I don't know.
Yeah, but at least we're moving away from the residential area. It's.
I think-
wasn't.
I think, if we're really looking to have this a family-friendly area, this is just my opinion, obviously. And we're trying to rethink this because what's happening right now is obviously not working. Probably the easiest solution would be, well, the easiest solution would be to remove hoops, but, or the rims. But the second easiest solution would be to lower both baskets rather than trying to relocate one. And then look at other things that could be done at the court, that could be painted on, but maybe we want to remove the rims for now while we consult with Lou. I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Why invite the bull back right away? I think this seems like something we could probably figure out relatively quickly. How difficult would it be, Greg, to just drop the?
They're not adjustable, so.
Yeah, they're not adjustable, so it's basically, it's a matter of,
How exactly it's.
would you cut and weld, or would you?
We have to look at it, see what-
Depends on how they're attached, I'm assuming, because
Yeah.
if it's a tapered pole, you need to have a whole new attachment to the board.
So we're talking about the $12,000 acoustic fence, which, I mean, if we come in at, $500-600 to rebuild posts or whatever, we're kind of in a good place relative to this other dollar amount.
maybe we should do a straw poll here. I mean, does anybody think that spending $12,000 for an acoustic fence is still a good option? Yeah, I don't either. Okay.
So
So,
to have an option, though, it's nice to be able to, have one more thing to look at.
so where do we want to go with it now that we've decided that? Do we want to take this back to Lou?
Well, is it really in our purview as the planning commission to do this? It seems to me that we're now into the, send it back to the Parks and Rec Committee to figure out the issue that the planning commission or finance is not willing to spend up to $12,000 for the noise mitigation issue that's been developed because of the design. So I would rather throw it back to the Parks and Rec and let that committee figure it out, where to place it and how to rectify the noise issue.
But we could give them, I think, if you want to go, would you be, I'm assuming you would be going back to the meeting and talking with them. You could go, I don't see anything wrong with Greg going back and telling them what our suggestions
I'm sure he's the lawyer.
and then see what they think, and if they like that, they can expand on it, and then bring it back to.
Yeah, so essentially ask them to come up with a plan for that court that's family friendly and will hopefully eliminate any concern about noise or objectionable behavior. And then we can figure out what to do with those, whether that involves lower them or try and relocate them. There's gonna be some lost costs there somewhere.
Yeah.
So we're not throwing at them the job of determining the noise mitigation. We're saying to them, see what you can come up with that's a family-friendly layout for the thing, with us assuming that that's going to mitigate the noise.
Family friendly, basically non-basketball.
Yeah.
solution.
Or
We're saying
basketball.
if basketball's too loud or objectionable for that location.
That's good.
If I could add one more thing, my apologies, and not to make this more complex, but I do appreciate the fact that we finally have a really great place to play basketball, for a bunch of our young people. It's always kind of mystified me how we have or had, I don't know how many tennis courts we have between Wilbur and Newa, but we had, 2 basketball courts. I'd love to see that part of our kind of, and I don't know, maybe it's already there, but part of our master plan of the parks include more basketball usage or basketball development. I know there's a significant cost there. Converting tennis courts was an easy, convenient way. I don't disagree with the logic, but I think we need to have a plan towards basketball, but someplace where it can be its own entity and not have the disturbance of other residents or other things. So just the plug in there. So it was nice to see it being used, and it was being used actively by a bunch of young people. Just unfortunately, I feel it's the right idea in the wrong place.
Yeah, it's about the park. Between the Newell master, well, the Parks master plan has the court, the older court, Newell Park, it's closer to the playground area being relocated to being next to the newer Newell court. It's over closer to the baseball field. And then we've also identified lower court, upper court being replaced at some point in the same location. So maybe that's something to consider.
Maybe.
Do we want to replace the upper lower court where it is? I think the Newell plan makes sense, but the 2 courts next to each other. If
Yeah.
there's a league that wants to play there, then makes it convenient for them to go around the 2 courts next to each other. And then the question is, are we gonna run into the same concern or a similar concern with a new court in upper Wilbur? It seems like, I think Wilbur, the reason why they were going to play there is just more convenient than having to go down to Newell, they can walk there from the center. And so it's nice to have them there, but do you want next to the playground? So if you'd like, I can ask the Parks and Rec Commission to consider that as well at the same time.
Yeah, I didn't know there was an issue with the one next to the playground, other than it being really old. And needing
Well, it's
to
not an
be
issue
done.
other than that, and just in the master plan, they showed putting it next to the new one. It's, I think, to make a little basketball area.
You mean down below in lower Wilbur Park, moving it?
No, I mean, Newell.
Oh, no, okay, but the one in Wilbur Park, the plan was to keep that one, correct?
Yeah.
So redoing it.
Oops.
Yeah.
Make it nice.
But I think part of the reason why it hasn't been an issue is because it's been in pretty rough shape for a long time. So, the young people that are serious about playing ball aren't going to usually head to that. You know,
Right.
It does kind of collect the families or a couple of kids playing a little one-on-one. It's not used by, you know, serious players.
Well, maybe, since we're discussing this, we know there's an issue and we know there is money that we're looking at potentially putting into the parks and outdoor recreation. Maybe we can fast track the repair of that basketball court in Upper Wilbur if we're planning on removing this one completely, which we know that is being used a lot.
So I'd be, you know, super supportive of that. The other thing I'd want to do is maybe put some signage out at the smaller court or at the court that we're looking to modify and make more of a family-friendly court that explains that we're doing this and then we're going to be taking care of the basketball court so that, you know, people don't feel like they're just having something that they're using now be taken away from them. And that way they don't feel disenfranchised and you don't wind up with the blowback because of that, or potentially vandalism because of that.
I think we have a short amount of time before that court is no longer going to be used for the season. So I think this will buy us some time and we'll have Park and Rec come up with something before we have an official sign put on it. And I think I'd rather do that once we know what we're going to do.
I think concurrently when we are actually doing stuff.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have anything else to say about that topic?
So just to recap, we're sending this back down to Parks and Rec.
Yes. Come up with better family-friendly solutions. But I believe this is on finance, so if there's anything that comes up, I mean, Greg, you're gonna be at finance, so I don't expect anything new to come up about this, but it's gonna change everybody's mind.
It's not on finance.
Isn't it on finance? Is it? I thought it was. I don't see it. No? Oh, okay, well, never mind that. Okay. All right, so let's move on to pedestrian safety. Greg, that's you again.
Okay, last time there was some discussion about certain specific areas in the city where there were safety concerns, one of which was the West Street intersection or the pedestrian crosswalk at Clinton. And I think also one thing to that is the same West Street section crosswalk at Harvard Drive. And since then, I think that was mentioned in this committee, and also since that's been mentioned by the Harvard College president, there's been some concerns. So what we had done, actually, Harvard had done in the past, we did some work on it, Harvard Drive, the entrance, they extended the sidewalk down the street. They installed some signage and painted the crosswalks at Harvard Drive, and it's always been painted at Clinton Street, I believe. We put in the in-street pedestrian signs that run over and all the time and are not super effective, as I would judge them. Obviously, that's a stretch. There's fairly, I wouldn't say high speeds, but people are going at this speed limit or possibly a little bit above it. It's a straight stretch. There's a lot of traffic on it. There's also quite a few pedestrians that cross there on the way out of the college or elsewhere. So it's definitely a concern. And our recommendation would be to install some additional signage as well as painting the crosswalk lines. Paved marking contractor, we have on contract now, is supposed to be back to finish this week. However, they have been recently unresponsive. So I'm not real confident they're gonna get back and finish that. If they don't, then we'll take care of it ourselves. We'll ready before that. The signage we would install would be a few hundred feet in advance of the crosswalks, the same crosswalk ahead. Dash line. I don't expect that that's gonna make a huge difference, but it's something we can do. If they're not already there, they might be there. And then the other thing we're going to explore and getting quotes to install what's called a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, which is where you see, if you think of Fulton Road through SUNY campus, or if you've driven up there the past year or so, I think we've been there for a year or two now, where if a pedestrian is trying to cross the street, I think theirs are actually motion detector, but you can have them where they're push button activated. Things start flashing so that the car sees that someone's trying to cross. So they don't flash all the time, just when someone's trying to cross, which has been proven more effective than, you know, the police rifle kind of is flashing all the time. So we were gonna look into what the cost is, I believe, there might be an opportunity to share the cost with Hardwick. And that's something that, depending on how quickly we get it delivered, we can install ourselves at something. Possible.
What's the name of that?
It's called a RRFB, rectangular rapid flashing.
Greg, is there, sorry, go ahead.
No,
Is there a reason for the color of the crosswalk being white? Can that be changed? Or is there a state law against it? Has to be white. Okay.
they're reflective. It's retro reflective. They're retro reflective beads. Retro reflective meaning your headlights shine and then it shines back at whatever angle the light came from. As opposed to, reflect.
That can't be done with a different color.
No, it has to be white. Not because the beads have white, because the MUTCD that man do on uniform traffic.
Yeah.
Otherwise, dictates that crosswalks have to be white.
Okay, I was just thinking with how quickly they get worn out, and especially around here with snow and salt, it just kind of, you lose sight of it after a while, so. Yeah. Okay,
I came in off of, on 357, I was in Unadilla, came into Franklin from 357, just take the back end into Oneonta. I was following, there were a couple of us on a bit, kind of a high-speed conga line on 357. And as you pull into the town of Franklin, they have sign after sign that says slow down. And everybody slowed right down. It's just being told to slow down had some effect. So I know you're saying you're looking at signage. Something even as simple as they're approaching that curve where it's a blind curve, slow down. Blind curve coming up, pedestrians, etc. But the word slow down made an impact. This is anecdotal, this is not scientific, but on, like I said, our little conga line of high speed, folks come off of 357, we went, oh, what's worth?
Yeah, there is the the speed, radar speed feedback sign.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit further up the street.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
And that, since it works on me, I always do slow down for that, and I might be an outlier, but I think that's probably true of more folks than not.
So Greg, the New York State Department of Transportation, the law says that we cannot implement a change in the speed unless it's within 500 feet of an educational institute.
We can't set any speed below 25 miles per hour unless it's, there are guidelines as far as how close it is to a school.
What I don't know is that of the entrance to the school or school property? And if it's the latter, then that would give us some latitude to start slowing the traffic up on West Street long before the intersection of Center and or Clinton.
I'm not sure, I can't say right now whether that applies to a private university or if that's more just elementary school, high school distinction. The issue with setting speed limits much lower than the road is designed for is that you'll just get more non-compliance. I don't know that you're gonna get people driving 15 miles an hour on West Street. If the sign says 15 and the road says 35, it's difficult to have a real adjustment there. Much higher compliance.
That takes me back to the 357 thing where they weren't modifying the speed limit. They were just saying, slow down. What's worth?
okay, so I think those are some options that'll help in those areas. So we have another area here.
Yeah.
Church.
So, church and Chestnut, I think. I mentioned that one. I understand the issue. It's more, not so much church and Chestnut, but it's just up from the bus stop, which is
Watkins.
in west. It's at Watkins and
And I guess it's up on Church, not right at the intersection. I was mistaken. I thought it was the intersection, but it's more the speed, I guess, where they were concerned with.
over church. Yeah. I don't have that in front, just I guess to address that one. But police department did do a speed study there with a device that measures speed without a compass. So it's not as though people are knowing that their speed's being recorded, but it showed almost zero, very little activities. Yeah, so I think it's a relative thing. There's
In the eye of the beholder, I guess.
yeah, a lot of pedestrians and a car going the speed limit, it certainly seems like it's going faster than speed limit. Some of those things, I think, further up Church, we can look at some mid-block crosswalks, signage, possibly in the future, reconstruction of the street, change, altering the geometry a little bit, not the geometry of the road, but creating some curb bumps or something like that, but I see that.
You know, I've been on River Street a lot lately, and as talking to folks, an awful lot of folks have expressed concerns about the, you know, the straightaway speed. You know, you get essentially a straightaway that allows you to really kind of gun it for a bit. And it's there's maybe one more street to look at.
Yeah, I know Scott's just joined us here and he mentioned, you know, on River Street, looking at pedestrian friendly and bike friendly things. And one of the things I suggested, because there's not a lot of parking on the street, there's actually a place, you know, there is alternate side parking. Long stretches of River Street is putting in bike lanes on bike there. Church Street's a little different, we have a lot of parking, would be room for bike lanes. But I guess circling back around to Chestnut and Watkins, the issue there, you know, you can't really put a crosswalk at Watkins the way it is now with the bus stop where it is. I think we'd like to do a little engineering study there, see if there's another option to be moving that bus stop a little bit further up the street, further west toward Rite Aid, and possibly creating a crosswalk there, which is as a mid-block crosswalk, but it is still, it's only 200 feet from Church and Chestnut. I'm not sure it's the best location, but it's something we want to study a little bit closer.
So they're definitely crossing there. It's been going on for years and years. They're coming down from Watkins Ave, the apartment house complexes and apartment houses.
So the bus stop is near Watkins right now, is that right?
Basically right across, right, so right in front of the Dollar General deposits.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Which to Greg's point really backs traffic up. If you're headed west on Chestnut Street, coming out of the light, the bus stops and then it just backs it all the way back into the intersection.
You can't get around the bus without running across the yellow line.
Yeah, I don't think legally you're allowed to cross over, so.
If we were to move it further west or Rite Aid, you might be able to take away a few parking spaces on the south side of Chestnut Street, yes. And then shift the lanes to allow a bus stop with a lane that goes around it. So the bus will be pulling over to stop as opposed to the stop in the middle of the lane. Correct. But that's something that requires more detail. So I think we're gonna
Let's
take
start
a few
the
months, go through that process.
Yeah.
And probably Q1 of next year, we can have some kind of resolution. And one thing we definitely want to plan for, which we don't have budget for next year, but could be, you know, confirmed in this study and then budgeted for in future years to install a pedestrian push button for the walk crossings at Chestnut Church, which do not exist now. That would help.
Greg, if I could return to River Street for a moment, I appreciate the idea of bike lanes, but what's the going thinking about stop signs? I mean, I remember sometime your voice hits my head about, I think it was Spruce, about basically there's a race to the next one, but is there any proof that the stop signs actually do slow the traffic and keep it calm, or is it exactly that, there's a race?
Studies tend to show that putting in stop signs for the purpose of speed control is not a good idea necessarily, because like on a street like River Street, we got a lot of traffic, it's a straight stretch, everyone's going straight, and vast majority of traffic through most of those intersections. You're gonna have people that are annoyed by the stop sign being there, they're gonna roll through the stop sign, and it's just kind of, it's been shown that it doesn't really reduce the speed. You just have more acceleration to get back up to the speed you're going or makeup time. You know, it's sort of a psychological thing, I think, but, you know, we can, again, we can do traffic studies anywhere we like, with the intent of improving pedestrian and bicycle safety. But I think the conclusion is probably going to be like that is that stop signs are not right. But there are other things that potentially. things like the curb bump outs, or creating their crosswalks, or signs that we have rapid flashing beacons. Depends on what the goal is, I think. Speed or concerns about pedestrians and bugs.
So was thinking then all of the stop signs that we installed a few years ago, Center City, and Walnut, haven't really helped.
I live on Center Street between Church and D Street, and one of my neighbors just about daily is yelling at cars going by for speeding, when I'm sure if you were to take a radar gun and clock them, they're not speeding, but they're accelerating quickly. And one stop sign to another one is 800 feet away. It certainly doesn't seem like a safe thing when kids across the street, essentially school, getting unloaded with their parents going to preschool. But I guess in that case, I would say that's a case point where it's not really helping the perception.
Okay,
Not to
so,
say the stop signs, that's not to say the stop signs are never. Right.
so, just so I have this correct, we're talking about Church Street, Chestnut Street intersection compliance has been pretty good. And that there hasn't been an issue there.
On Church Street itself, we did a speed
Okay,
study. I think it was
and that was
somewhere
okay.
in mid-range around Walnut Street. There wasn't a ton of.
But as far as Watkins Avenue, it's possible to move the bus stop in the future. But we're gonna look to do a study to see if there's something better that we can do in that area, when you're looking at a recommendation sometime next year.
They only three.
Yeah, that's what I had down. Okay. Does anybody have anything else to discuss on pedestrian safety?
Actually, I had one thing, Dave.
One more.
We would also like, which we've been kind of planning this for a while, to do a little study at East and Graduate Ave for the high school entrances. That
Yeah.
traffic signal pole needs to be replaced, and we also like to extend the sidewalk from where it ends now on the east side of East Street, around 9th Street. And bring that up, so we want to study that and come up with a plan for future capital project.
That's not an easy one. Okay, thanks, Greg. All right, one-way streets.
Okay, so we had Potter Ave, and Dave had received a concern issue about should it be a one-way street? It's certainly not wide enough. If you're building a street today, you wouldn't build two-lane, two-way street. 12 feet wide or 13, whatever it is now. Historically, I guess anecdotally, we spoke with Dave Merzig, who had said that he looked at the past in his tenure, and actually in my tenure, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, we had a meeting, and none of the residents then were in favor of changing it to one way. They wanted it to stay two-way. I think, Dave Merzig had shared was that originally this was two-way, it was changed to, or it was one way, I think going from Maple to Pine. And then at some point, there were concerns about traffic trying to turn off Pine on the main. And I know that is a difficult left turn to make if you're trying to turn left there. And that's when they changed it to two-way. We're gonna try to do, know that the police have been able to do it yet, just the traffic count. Speed study as well, that's not the issue here. Just get a count how many cars are going each direction on Potter Avenue any given day, but I don't think there's very many. I think it's a low volume, and that's why we don't hear about the issue more often, because if you do go down that street and meet another car, there's hardly anywhere to pass, you kind of have to go in the driveway, so.
I think people that live on Pine will cut through occasionally, but there's only, what, 5 houses, I think?
Driveways, in fact.
Yeah. When are the police looking to do a traffic count? Any idea?
Soon if they haven't already, I'll call with Chief Wittenberg. I know they. What we, we talked about it, police chief and Chris Young, public works director, and I, about installing some no-through traffic signs, one on each end, just to sort of send a message that, whether that has a real effect or not.
What about having signs that say warning two-way traffic, narrow street, something like that. There's gotta be something like that that other municipalities have done. I think at the very least, something like that should be done if we plan on changing nothing. And then, of course, the most we can do is change it to a one-way. But, well, I look forward to your recommendation on that.
I think for now, our first step is addition to the study is to try out the traffic sign. Comes down.
Well, would they go back and do another traffic count afterwards? Or if they find there's only 10 cars going through during the day? That's it, work.
Well, 10 the whole day, but
Yeah.
it's not very many.
Yeah. Okay. I think the other street we had was Telford.
Yeah, it's Telford, and I'm not sure if there's some residents that had asked about that one. So we don't have any history, same with Potter, we don't have a history of accidents. I guess to go back to Potter, the accident history area, the only accidents near there were on Maple Street and their side swipes, so I had to do with park cars. So there was nothing to do with turn movements there. Same with Telford, we don't have any recent history the last few years, but we were able to check history of accidents there. I think the issue is just that it is narrow, it is wide enough to pass two cars. It's just narrow, it's narrower at the bottom of the hill at Telford Chestnut, where if you have someone waiting on Telford trying to turn left or right on the Chestnut, someone trying to turn on Telford, it's tough to make that turn, you might have to leave. You know, we didn't see that as necessarily a safety issue or something that manifested into safety concern, history of accidents or otherwise. And in our experience in the past, when we have approached residents as a whole about changing the one-way streets, especially it reminds me of Monroe Ave. At one point, we were looking at changing one section of it to one-way. The residents were all against it because it is on the top of the hill. And so, well, sometimes it's easier to go up this hill than that hill. In the winter, one's easier to go up another than the car you have. I wonder if it might be a similar issue in Telford and Lewis.
I think this is not the first 20 feet on Telford, you gotta go up. I think there's that site issue too. A few have suggested, so. So you wanna go wait and see?
In my opinion, I don't see a warrant for it, for the need. Certainly, if we got enough traffic right there. I know what it is, certainly a low profile street.
Anybody have anything to add? Okay. Thanks, Greg. Moving on, Winter Armory rec use. This is something that Mark asked to put on the agenda.
Yeah, right. So I was talking to the folks over at the Y, and they've got some pretty regular use of the couple of pickleball courts that they've got indoors. They know they're kind of anticipating that there's going to be a desire to have pickleball continue into the winter months. And they'd like to take over the armory during the daytime, Monday through Friday, to set up half a dozen pickleball courts and have leagues. They would charge a small fee, and they would do the maintenance, they would do the oversight of it. Basically, they'd pack it up and put it away when they're done with it, and they'd reset it up so that all the other things that might happen within the context of the building could continue unfettered. So
Is that, excuse me, Mark, is that during, you said during the week, during the day?
yeah, during the day, Monday through Friday. Okay. It'd be a day program.
Do we have anything else happening at the armory in the middle of the day during the week?
I don't believe much of research for time. During the winter is our heaviest usage time at the gym.
Right.
You've got soccer, and you've got volleyball eventually, and basketball throughout. Basketball's typically on Sundays all day,
Right, they don't want to do the weekends.
and the others are at night. So during the days is where it's available. And they had mentioned this to us as well, and Lou and Perry were looking at our current contract. So like with Blendo's basketball league, in a soccer club and a players volleyball association, they all have contracts with the city for a set amount of fee is discounted from our capital fees there. So we can arrange something similar with YMCA. We have to figure out what that fee would be, how many hours are used.
Yeah, so,
Lou's gonna be working with the Frank, I guess, to figure out what exactly.
right, so they, clearly they want to accommodate the schedule that is already in place so that they weren't doing anything but adding to the activities that are available. They are essentially, they're providing the manpower, they're providing, again, the logistics, the maintenance, all of that. So I suspect if there is if there are dates and times that they can or cannot, use the facility, it would be on them to try to produce something that looked like a contract proposal, so that we can take a look at it and see whether or not that's something, as long as all fits into the schedules that already exist. I can't see any downside to it. I've heard it myself.
Yeah, we can just modify contracts we have with other groups and. So all of those, I believe, are up for renewal at the end of this year anyway, so it makes sense to, looking at what the demand is for the spaces.
What kind of time frame would we be looking at in order for them to know what they might be dealing with in terms of putting together a proposal?
I think we can get a meeting with them and talk about it sometime in the next week or two.
That'd be great.
2 weeks. We can have.
So what they'll want to do is they'll actually want to see if they can get leads, formed, and so having some lead time to be able to do that would be a huge help.
Does anybody have any objection to this happening? I mean, it sounds like a great idea to me. So, okay. So Greg, I'll leave that to you and Lou. To work your magic and get back to the full council and hopefully get this approved. Okay, looking at the time, we got 10 minutes here. Did everybody get a chance to look at the local intel quality of life tool? I thought it was great. I looked at it today. The only question I have is how do they get their information for it? But as long as we don't have to be the ones to fill that and change it constantly, I think it's a great idea. I think I don't have the cost in front of me, but I think the two options, I think the 3-year was
1982 for a 3-year contract and 2532 for a 1 year.
I suspect, I mean, I don't know, but I suspect we would be adding to the database that they already have or that they're, assembling with every new thing. For instance, this pickleball at, the Armory, these things would be added into it by us, I would imagine. For me, I mean, I love it, I really do. For me, I don't know, and I'd like to know whether or not there's a teaser amount of information that could be provided and then have people access the more detailed information, the deep dive essentially, by providing us some level of contact information, because as we're looking at the Survive and Thrive marketing, we are excited about linking up to this local intel information as one more way to pull people in and and capture their contact information. So I don't know that there's a step off, but I would bet that if there isn't, we could probably figure this out.
Okay.
But I'll
Ross, do you have anything you want to add? Thoughts?
No, I think anytime we're able to promote what we're doing, it's a good thing. And so, I mean, it helps raise the profile and gets people thinking about us.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, this is what's on your agenda in finance, correct? Okay, that's what I was thinking of. So, I think everybody here is in agreement, I'm assuming, on this one. And I think it's a good thing for Oneonta. It's a good thing for anybody that's considering moving to Oneonta. It's a good thing for any current residents to see. So, okay.
I guess I'd add one thing. Do they have any, have they ever, do they have any data that we've been able to see in terms of what their hits are and things like this? You know, market language, I'm not sure, but like to know what the impact of this is.
The impact on other,
Yeah.
like their example, the county that they use, Adams County, how did that impact? That's a good question. That's a good question. I don't know.
I bet if we asked, they'd have something for us, because that's that'd be part of their sales pitch.
Great tool if it's used.
I guess the impact, I mean, there's lots of different types. Are we talking about economic impact, population increase?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Although frankly, for the price,
Small investment, basically 6 or 8 years chance. Yeah. Actually, it's not, I shouldn't say taking a chance. It's not much of a chance.
You say it's almost $2,000 for 3 years?
No, per year.
First reduce their amount.
Yeah. Yeah, 1,900 per year. And you know what, I mean, if we, I'll send a note to Gary to see if he can reach out to Intel and local Intel to see if they have that information for us. And it could be that, you know, we do this for something like this for 3 years, and if we don't see what we want to see from it, then it's a small investment. But hopefully they can reach out and give us some data. Anybody have anything else they want to add?
I believe it was an appreciates free or something. I can't remember.
Mark, do you remember what year the contract we put into Intel? Was it a 3 or a 5? I was just trying to remember what like that contract was.
I don't know. I'd be guessing if I were. Sorry, Lynn.
Either way, we'll line up.
If we don't have anything else on that topic, does anybody else have anything else they want to bring up? Great.
One little thing, it's just something you had asked us, Dave, but it didn't have to be agenda, because I didn't know at the time, it's just an update, creek cleaning proposal.
Yeah.
I asked Mike Forster, Rock Park, to send over an update. Environmental board hasn't met since the last planning meeting. He has talked to 2 valued teachers who are on board, and I guess the principals of the elementary schools are talking to one another to see whether teachers might be interested in participating. He also checked in Judy and asked a question about the SRBC, Susquehanna River Basin Commission. They don't need to be involved because this wouldn't affect water quality, capacity, or usage.
What was the abbreviation on that again?
SRBC, Susquehanna River Basin Commission. We pay a fee to that commission for water withdrawal from the Susquehanna River Basin. And also he checked with USGS regarding if there's a minimum size of a creek to be named, and there is none. I guess there's. I forget where it was in Kansas, there's a creek called Dusty Creek that hasn't flowed water in like a decade, but they named that, so.
Very dusty.
There was like a 400-foot creek or something,
That's
so there's no limit.
All right. Well, thank you.
Before we shut down totally,
Yeah.
can I just, Greg, as long as got you. You had mentioned that we're talking about painting of the asphalt and that they were a little bit non-connective to you right now. Do we know whether or not, am I right? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we know whether or not the various arrows and other, parking kind of lines and so forth, so that we've been talking to various residents about, are those going to happen, do you think, before snowfall?
As much as we can. I'm not sure exactly what's, I know they have done some think they said they're about 2/3 of the way through, but I don't know the exact location they haven't done that. We're gonna have somebody engineers can go on that and just see what hasn't been done. We can prioritize the ones that were specific requests.
If we could prioritize those, that we could say, yes, we're gonna get something fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if we could, thank you.
Yeah, this is the third year of the 3-year contract. The paved markings will be going out to bid for a probably 3-year contract.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think the sooner we get that done, the better. On the way here, I almost got hit by somebody saying to go the wrong way on Wall Street. Okay, anything else?